Howdy, it's Jim Murado, and this is late May 2025. We're in my old stomping grounds of Owensboro, Kentucky, and we're about to go visit the Owensboro Museum of Science and History. I don't get to Owensboro nearly as much as I used to. I have tried to stop here several times when I've been in town. Often it's been on a holiday or on a weird weekday, and the several times I've tried to get here, the museum has been closed. In fact, the last time, and it's right across the street from the coffee shop there. Lots of nice coffee shops in Owensboro. But yeah, the last time I was at the museum, it was at the old location, so that probably dates me quite a bit there. I do remember the old train layout that they used to have, and they've got this train layout now in the front, kind of in the gift shop area of the museum. You could probably stick your head in here and check this out, even without buying a ticket. It's right at the front, really right in the window. You could probably just look in the window and see it. All sorts of little levers to push and pull and get things to happen on this train layout. And I do remember at the old museum, it was always exciting watching the train go by. I believe it was $5 each to go through the museum, and that was a fair price. I'm glad they have the museum. It is in the old Anderson building, or old Anderson's shopping shop, a big department store, big old school department store. My aunt was with us on this day, and she used to work at Anderson's. I think she helped them close it. But it was kind of fun as we walked around the museum. She would comment about what department was here, what department was there, and that was a lot of fun. In fact, I do remember being little and going and seeing her at work, so it was kind of neat, coming back into the current museum with my aunt and just checking things out. I got about 15 minutes worth of video and pictures, and I just thought I would chat a little bit about Owensboro and the museum as we walk around. I do recall back in the probably early 80s, first going to the old museum, how great it was. It was overwhelming. It was big. It was epic. I do remember the big kind of life-size painting on the wall of dinosaurs. That was cool. By the way, I remember this from the old gift shop, 1 cent stamps. And if you're a little kid, if you're just getting into stamp collecting and that sort of thing, it was so much fun going through and looking for those stamps. Just a real treat. Used to be a fish tank aquarium person. Always loved looking at a nicely kept fish tank, especially one as large and spectacular as that. I thought we'd look through the gift shop here real quick before we get going into the museum. Had a nice fountain, other displays. There were things that I did remember from the old museum, but a lot of stuff that I remembered from the old museum that's no longer there. I believe that guy was in the old museum. Oh, yeah, the old museum was epic. You'd walk in, uh, if you went towards the right, there was a room where local artists had their drawings and paintings, and that was always nice. And you'd kind of walk around in a big loop, I guess a big square, big circle. Nice look at the gift shop from this angle. I did ask the very kind young ladies working there if they had any displays on the last public hanging in Kentucky, 1936. My grandfather was there, and so was my uncle. They have both since passed away. But they did not have a display on that, and I thought that was, yeah, I wish they would have had a display on that. They did have some great other displays. On this particular day, I did go look around. Kind of did a little drive around looking at sites relating to that last public hanging. I'll probably put up a video on that later. I did stop by the Kentucky room at the public library, and a very nice young lady helped me find some articles on it. I'm sure they get asked about that probably daily, probably multiple times a day. And yeah, anyway, the museum, there was a lot going on here, a lot of room, a lot of stuff spaced out. Would have liked to have seen a lot more Owensboro stuff. Um, they did have some displays on specific people and their military service, as they should. But I would have liked to have seen, maybe something on Gabe's Tower, something on the Executive Inn, a couple of landmarks that those of us that grew up in the 80s remember well. Not to criticize, I was still happy to be here. Still good seeing all of what they had, and I enjoyed this visit quite a bit. But I would have liked to have seen a few more definitive Owensboro things. And yeah, I do like the location of the museum downtown. Downtown Owensboro's really, yeah, kind of had some life breathed back into it over the last decade or so, and I'm very glad to see that. I do miss the calmness of going down and walking around downtown, but then it got a little sketch there for a while. But it's very nice now. Lots of businesses. I mentioned the Crim Coffee Shop right across the street from the museum, and yeah, they had the cool old wagon there. Oh, and speaking of the gift shop, going back to the gift shop for just a moment, we all know that Joe Ford, kind of got the museum going. He was definitely the face of the museum for forever. I remember him coming to my elementary school and talking. And that's pretty cool. I'm glad they've got that displayed there. That looks epic. That looks wonderful. Yeah, but I remember Joe Ford coming to my elementary school, Utica Elementary, back when it existed, and telling ghost stories at Halloween, and how man, you looked forward to that. That was pretty cool. And yeah, things like that just don't happen anymore. You don't have a Joe Ford, and that's sad. Joe Ford wrote a couple, maybe three books, kind of self-published, photocopied kind of books. I've tracked one of them down, and I know I've seen another one for sale, and people have asked $50 to $100 for his books. And again, they're pretty much pamphlets. They're small. You could photocopy one if you had it for 20 cents on your home computer printer. I wish the library, here's an idea for the library. They should reprint Joe Ford's books. That's something that people like me would scarf up. And yeah, just a good idea. My pal David Wolf does the Ghost Walk, or he has done the Ghost Walk in Owensboro in the past, and he has written the his book on the ghosts of Owensboro, and he references Joe Ford in that book. Tips his hat to Joe Ford, as he should. Hunt that book down, by the way, if you haven't. But yeah, and they had this whole section, pretty cool display of a boat, I thought. But they had this whole display on racing. I like racing. I can name maybe two or three NASCAR drivers. I'm not big on it. I have an appreciation for it, and I do have some friends that are very much into it. And I know I saw something on the Chandlers through here growing up in kind of rural western Kentucky. I do recall going to the Chandlers' house and them working on my dad's car. Good people, and I was glad to see them get some attention that they deserved. I don't know if anybody remembers the old Sauceman's grocery and hardware store. A fella named Remus Sauceman used to run that out close to where I grew up, kind of getting into the Windy Hollow area. And that place was there for over half a century. And very, very nice guy. I would go in there. I remember being a little kid, like, 2 or 3, and my dad would just set me on the counter, and he didn't care. He was just a My dad would talk to Remus for a while, and just a really nice guy. And I remember he was into racing cars. If you remember Remus Sauceman or his old store, drop me a note. Lots of cool stuff to see at the museum. You've got some taxidermy there. They do have kind of a fake cave that I do walk through here in a little bit. Big play area for the kids. And of course, the place is pretty vacant for the most part. I think besides my wife, me, my aunt, we saw just a fistful of other people here, which is a shame. This place should be packed. But I'm glad it's there. And if I were a kid, I would probably go nuts for this area. And again, going to the old museum when I was a kid, I remember the gift shop, man. If you had like $2, you could walk out of that gift shop with a ton of stuff. Penny stamps. I think they had plastic dinosaurs for 10 cents. Sand dollars. The first place I ever saw a sand dollar was at the Owensboro Museum, and I think they sold them for $1 or $2. Um, but at that time in my life, a sand dollar was about the most exotic thing I could conceive of. Yeah, just a pretty cool thing. But the gift shop, that was something nuts. And I do recall for my birthday when I was a kid, we could pick it. We could go to a movie. We could go, and I remember a couple of times picking the Owensboro Museum. But yeah, being a country kid, not even really from Owensboro. I grew up on a farm, eh, 10, 12 miles outside of Owensboro, and going to the Owensboro Museum was it was pretty epic. Um, oh man, I remember they had that huge snakeskin displayed. Just so much to see the old relics, and yeah, just it was just always fun. If you remember the old museum, feel free to drop me a line. And I'm glad this is here. I'm glad it's in a bigger space. But I would like to see a little more with it. I did notice they are big on photocopies and replicas. I like original stuff. I like to see original items. So yeah, I would love to see more again. Gabe's Tower, Executive Inn, the Bethea hanging. Geez, and as we're moving on into the decades, I love the old Lincoln Mall. It'd be nice to see us display on the Lincoln Mall, and now the Town Square Mall. Now that it's pretty much done, I do like when I see the framed tobacco. That's kind of cool. I wish I'd saved some leaves from my dad's old farm. Wish I would have thought of that. Of course, yeah, big display on Wendell Ford, local politician, very popular fellow, and they had, in fact, a huge chunk of the museum was dedicated to him, which, yeah, I guess is appropriate. I'm not as up on him as I should be, I guess, but yeah, they did have a big part of the museum dedicated to Mr. Ford there. Oh, and they have this kind of fake cave to go through, and I thought this was really cool. And again, if you're a 4, 5, 6 year old kid, this is the kind of thing you'd go crazy over. I would want to go back to the museum just to go through this. I want to say one of my old, maybe it's showcaves.com or one of my Gurney guides lists this on their list of caves in Kentucky, which I thought was pretty cool. It's not a cave, but it got mentioned, and that's definitely some bragging rights for sure. Anyway, that was just a quick look through the Owensboro Museum. If you've been there, drop me a note. If you have any thoughts on it, let me know too. I did enjoy going through it. I was glad. Again, I'm glad it's still there. But yeah, I think there's some stuff they could do to spruce it up a little bit, and that's just my opinion. some things I would like to see in there. But again, I'm glad they're up and running. I'm glad they're in a good space. I'm glad they're downtown, and I'm glad just glad it's still there. Oh, maybe more on tobacco too. That was such a big part of a lot of our lives growing up in this area. Anyway, let me know what you think, and thanks for watching.